my God. 50 pounds, I said. Now look at that.
You're right on the button, I think.
Well, almost, hey?
47. 48. 47.
Oh my God. I don't know how you can...
Kilogram.
I can't get it on. Jeez.
Each summer, the village of Telegraph Cove on Vancouver Island hums with activity. It's a putting-in point for some of Canada's best sports fishing, a gateway to an area of stunning natural beauty and unique cultural diversity. In the town of Alert Bay, a few miles from Telegraph Cove, Sunday morning's hymns are still sung in Kwakwala, the area's indigenous language. The present is present in this Kwakiutl Indian community, but it is not yet dominant. New automobiles cruise past works of art whose cultural origins predate recorded history. Fa Ambers still carves totem poles in much the same way his Kwakiutl ancestors did, slowly and by hand. In Alert Bay, the crush of city life seems far away indeed.
No, this town is so darn small. If you want to go out with a woman, you got to move out of town for a while. Everybody's related.
But times are changing. The crowds are coming to this area now, attracted by the scenery, the fishing, and the killer whales, the largest concentration of these giant sea mammals found anywhere on Earth. Meanwhile, the demands of a growing affluent population for resources are altering this once pristine landscape with as yet undetermined environmental consequences. Recently, writer Michael Modzelewski returned to Alert Bay and Telegraph Cove to watch whales, visit old friends, and see what 10 years, a new highway, and the pressures of progress had made of his memories. Memories chronicled in a book called Inside Passage, an account of his adventures in the British Columbia wilderness. More than a decade ago, Modzelewski left city life behind to live alone in a friend's cabin on remote Swanson Island near Telegraph Cove.
During the 18 months I was there, I spent a grand total of $240.27. And it was an experiment. I wanted to drop out of being a consumer, buying so much constantly, to see if I could live off of the land and the ocean. And the Kwakiutl Indians have a saying that when the tide goes out, the table is set, meaning that you can forage for all of your food. And they also said if you starved to death, it was simply because you were lazy, that there was that much food in the ocean to live off of. So I put my wallet away and went out and caught fish every day.
Well, not every day. The fish weren't always biting. But with the advice of local Indians, Modzelewski learned to survive on clams, mussels, crabs, even kelp.
If you take the kelp fronds in the spring, roll them in the tube, slice them up and boil them in fresh water, they turn into noodles. I would pick huckleberries and salmon berries and blackberries. But the trouble was I ate more than I put in the basket, so by the time I got home there were very few left. Most of them were in my stomach rather than in the bowl. I spent 18 months on Swanson Island, and from the moment I got there I recognized it as true paradise. Every morning I would jump in bed and say, what new adventure today? What's possibly going to happen that I've never experienced before? And that's how much excitement there was in adventure, living all alone on an island. My parents came to visit on the island for a few days, and they had grown up during the Depression. And they saw me living with kerosene lamps, a stove that I had to cook on that also used for heat, and the outhouse was about 25 cold yards away during the wintertime. My dad said to me, I've worked so hard all of my life so that you wouldn't have these sorts of circumstances. And I looked at him and I said, sometimes, Dad, you have to lower your standard of living to reach a higher level of insight or understanding. And eureka, he totally understood that if you do it by choice, it's a world of difference.
Dear Deborah, I haven't seen another human being now for more than 2 months.
That first winter, no visitors came by. But alone on the island or in his kayak, Michael had time to think about life, death, philosophy, what was important and what wasn't. He observed the animals, their habits, the intricacies of their food chains, continually taking notes.
Whenever I would experience something totally magical, such as paddling right in the middle of the killer whales, that's when I really felt solitude or being alone. So I would come back into the cabin, take huge tablets of paper and write these 12 to 20-page letters to my friends.
Years later, those letters became the basis for his book. Swanson Island is surrounded by others, green gems in a grand archipelago. On one, Michael found the ruins of a Kwakiutl Indian village. In tall grasses, decaying totem poles, remnants of a rich culture gathered moss. The Indians had left the village decades earlier.
They had been here for 10,000 years and had very little effect on the land and the ocean. It was as if they had hardly been here at all.
The same cannot be said for our modern civilization. Returning to the area after little more than a decade's absence, Michael found abundant evidence of the downside of progress. Entire hillsides stripped to meet the demands of economic growth. His Indian friends, like Basil Ambers, expressed fear for the future.
We don't own this country. We hold it in trust for the next generation to come along to use it. And we have totally wrecked our role as custodians of this country. We've even so much as dared to say to the next generation and the generation after that you're never going to see a big tree again.
Basil takes the destruction of the natural world very, very much to heart because he's very much a traditional Indian. And I see a lot of pain and sorrow also that's affected him in the last 10 years because of the damage to the environment here.
So Michael Modzelewski came back to Swanson Island with fond memories, tempered by an awareness of the fragility of paradise. He hopes his book will help protect the magnificent Inside Passage and its natural wonders for all generations still to come.